There's a pleasure button hardwired into the female brain, one that logic can't override. A famous psychologist once said, "Sometimes the less you say, 'I like you,' the more she likes you." If your love life isn't clicking right now, it might not be due to a lack of effort or sincerity on your part. Instead, you might just be approaching the wrong design of the female brain. For example, you were sweet and attentive, but then, out of nowhere, her responses dulled, and distance crept in. What's happening here? The answer may not lie in her personality, but in the human brain's wiring. We feel pleasure and excitement when we encounter the unknown or the unpredictable, and romantic feelings are only triggered when the brain receives a certain kind of stimulation. In other words, the very words, "I love you," can sometimes backfire. This is why a man who is just sincere, just kind, and always meets expectations eventually feels flat or boring to a woman. So, what do? Simple. You need to press the switch that a woman cannot resist. If you understand where this switch is and press it at the right time, you'll spark her emotions. By approaching her according to her brain's true design, you appeal directly to her instincts. She may know what's happening, but her feelings will naturally lean toward you anyway. So today, we're talking about the 3 pleasure switches the female brain can't resist. They are 1. Not understanding, but translating. 2. The 70% blank space. 3. Making her feel like she's almost figured you out. These aren't manipulation tactics. They're a framework for accurately communicating your true appeal. And the first switch is all about a common mistake people make when responding to women. Switch 1. Translate. Not understand. How do you respond to a woman's troubles? It's tempting to say, "You're trying so hard," or "Don't sweat it." You might have even heard the advice. Don't give her advice. Just empathize. Like, "Yeah, that sucks. That must have been tough." While empathy is a great starting point, just agreeing and nodding isn't truly activating the switch, because what really moves the heart is translation, not just understanding. What does translation mean? It means articulating the emotions she has inside that she hasn't yet found the words for. For example, she mumbles, I'm just tired." First, empathize and accept it. "Oh man, that sounds rough." Then, after a slight pause, try this. "I wonder if you were just so focused on reading the room and everyone else's vibe all day." You are not just agreeing or cheering her up, you are finding the feeling she wanted to express but couldn't, and giving it words. That moment creates a deep sense of pleasure, the feeling of being truly seen. Let's imagine another scene. She tells you, "My boss said this thing, and I'm so pissed." First, align with her anger. That is infuriating. Then add, "It feels like you're putting in all this effort, but no one's actually seeing it, huh?" The anger or sadness she couldn't quite organize is suddenly given a clear shape by your words. This sensation of being perfectly identified is the very core of emotional pleasure. You're not making assumptions, you're giving a contour to her feelings by sitting with them. Translation isn't just echoing her emotion, it's giving it a form. When someone else puts words to an emotion you hadn't even realized you were feeling, it produces a deep sense of pleasure and trust. Of course, you won't always nail the translation perfectly, but even if you're slightly off, it can serve as a hint that helps her clarify, "No, wait, maybe it's this feeling." Simply being the catalyst for her to articulate her own feelings is enough to create immense value for her. "I'm so glad I talked to you. I feel much clearer now. She'll feel this." And that alone makes the attempt at translation worthwhile. This level of connection can't be reached through surface-level listening or simple agreement. It's a realm you can only enter by truly and intentionally engaging with her. This is why she unconsciously senses, "This man is truly listening to me." It is not just understanding, it is a translation that touches the heart. So, how do you develop this power of translation? One way is to focus on the primary emotion that lies beneath her words. The primary emotion isn't the surface reaction, it's the real, deeper feeling. For example, if she's irritated or angry, the primary emotion might be hurt or loneliness. If she seems down, It might be the disappointment of an unmet expectation. We often unconsciously wrap our feelings in layers, but when someone sees past those layers and recognizes the primary emotion, that's when a person feels truly understood. So, don't focus only on the content of what she's saying. Pay attention to the temperature of her emotion. Is her voice accelerating with anxiety when she's angry? Is her smile a little strained when she's sad? That careful observation of these small signs is the first step toward translation. We place a unique trust in someone who attempts to feel and respond in their own words, even if they're a little clumsy. Think about this. When you confide a worry or a sorrow to someone, what feeling washes over you when they perfectly guess? I wonder if you're feeling this way. The same thing happens to women. Neuroscientifically, when we feel our emotions are understood, oxytocin and dopamine are released, simultaneously reinforcing trust and pleasure. Romance is a process where two hearts resonate, but that resonance doesn't last forever. In fact, sometimes the stronger your feelings, the more her heart pulls away. The cause might actually lie in how you praise her. Next, we'll talk about why. Switch 2. The 70% blank space. Would you believe that every time you say, "You're cute," her heart is actually pulling away a little? Being praised should feel good, but in reality, overpraising often cools the relationship. Why? Because the human brain quickly habituates to stimulation. The compliments that once thrilled her become flat when repeated. It's like a new perfume. Eventually, you stop smelling it yourself. The scent didn't change. Her brain just decided, "I already know that," and stopped reacting. In romance, validation needs to be handled with care. Dopamine, the pleasure and motivation chemical, releases most intensely when things are unpredictable. Her brain reacts most strongly when she doesn't know when or how she'll be praised. Conversely, if she's guaranteed a "you're amazing" every day, it becomes routine, and her brain ceases to react. It just thinks, "Here we go again." The goal isn't to stop complimenting. It's to think about how to deliver the spark. Think of validation like a fire. If you blow too hard, it flares up and dies instantly. If you never blow, it fades. You need to blow on it occasionally, from a distance that keeps it burning. That small, perfectly timed comment quietly reignites the fire inside her. Specifically, only express about 30% of what you feel. Let the remaining 70% sit in silence. That unsaid space is what gives your words power. Of course, this ratio needs to be adjusted. A more insecure person might need a little more reassurance, while a sensitive person might find that the quiet kindness of your silence builds greater trust. What matters is assessing what resonates most with her, not what you feel like saying. So, you don't need to react verbally every time you notice a change or effort from her. What's important is showing, through your attitude, that you are watching. And in the moment you feel a word will truly land, you quietly offer it. Sometimes, that quiet delivery penetrates the heart deeper than any long conversation. For example, when she gets a haircut, you can notice immediately and say, "That looks great." But if you do that every time, the words lose their weight. So, you might deliberately wait a few days and, in a casual moment, say, "That haircut you got, the vibe is different from before. It really suits you." That comment carries the weight of a few days of observation, making it feel less like a formality and more like a special recognition. Crucially, focus on complimenting her inner qualities and actions, not just her appearance. I really like how you think about that. I see you challenging yourself. I'm watching that. These words stick because they affirm he sees the real me. Approval of her existence, not just her surface, is what she remembers most strongly. The message "I see you" is conveyed not by quantity, but by quality and timing. You don't need to say "I love you" every day to someone truly important. They should feel it. Validation is a competition of weight, not number. And here's a final perspective. Pay attention to her reaction to compliments to understand what kind of validation she craves. If you give a light compliment and she deflects, "No, not at all," but secretly looks pleased, she might be craving deeper praise because she's not used to receiving it. Conversely, if she overpraises you for trivial things, that's amazing. She might be projecting the kind of validation she wants for herself. How a person praises others often reveals the validation they are seeking. The key is adjusting your delivery based on her response. That is the validation that truly reaches the heart. In dating, validation is a powerful weapon, but misuse it, and it's not just ineffective, it's counterproductive. Overpraising and an abundance of words eliminates the surprise and the blank space from the relationship. When you show her everything, she loses the space for imagination. This is when the romance quietly fades. Finally, let's talk about why the man who shows everything eventually becomes boring. Switch 3. Making her feel like she's almost figured you out. The all-in man becomes boring. This is a very common scenario in dating. He's sincere, honest, has nothing to hide, and tells her everything. But then, quietly, her feelings drift away. The moment a woman sees everything, she feels secure, yes, but she also loses interest, and her emotional drive stalls. Humans crave the unexpected. A predictable world gives comfort, but it doesn't create excitement or thrill. It's like reading a mystery novel where you already know the ending. Once the plot is known, the heart stops moving. The allure in a relationship is sustained by the promise that there is still something you don't know. The moment you lay everything bare, the romantic tension ends. People lose interest in what they've completely figured out. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. The partially completed puzzle, the melody cut short, the cliffhanger. We are obsessed with what is not finished. If you are the man who makes her think, I just want to know a little more about him, her brain will refuse to let go. The moment she thinks she's figured you all out, you become a comfort object, but you lose your appeal. So, how do you stay just vague enough? The key is information pacing. You don't have to hide anything, but manage the ratio of what you tell and what you don't. Disclose about 70%, and leave the remaining 30% ambiguous or blank. This pacing stimulates her imagination and lets her write her own narrative about you. The goal is not to be a total mystery, nor to be completely obvious, but to make her feel like she's just about to understand you. The moment she thinks, oh, I think I'm starting to get him, you gently pull back and return to a slight distance. It's like a silhouette briefly appearing through the fog before its edges soften again. People are most strongly drawn to the moment of almost understanding. The human heart is wired to cling longest to objects it can't fully grasp. We don't want to know the end of a story we've finished, but we obsess over what's just one step out of sight. That subtle distance, making her think she's almost figured you out but not quite, quietly shakes her imagination and her feelings. For example, when she asks, "What did you do today?" instead of a detailed explanation, try, "Oh, a lot of stuff. Something kind of interesting happened, but I'll tell you about it next time we meet." That comment remains strongly in her brain because your story is saved as a suspenseful series. Or, when asked, "What do you want to do in the future?" you can say, "I have some ideas, but I haven't quite articulated them yet, even to myself. Can I tell you about them when I've solidified it a little more?" This leaves a continuing story in her mind. Now, you might think, won't withholding information damage trust? The truth is, a truly trusted person is someone who only speaks when it's appropriate. A person who blurts out everything immediately may be honest, but can also seem shallow. Conversely, a man who chooses silence sparks the imagination. He must have something deep inside, making him seem intriguing and attractive. Whether you have an untold narrative that emanates from within you, that is one of the greatest attractions in a relationship. The man who talks too much will eventually be bored of. That may sound harsh, but it's natural given the brain's mechanics. Sometimes, the strength to keep quiet is more powerful than any word. That silence is where the woman's switch is hidden. When your love life feels stuck, we tend to look for what we lack. Did I not try hard enough? Should I have been more honest? But maybe you weren't lacking. Maybe you were giving too much. These three switches that appeal to a woman's instinct aren't just techniques. They are natural behaviors rooted in self-awareness and genuine respect for your partner. Start integrating these three switches into your approach.